You better knock around. Yeah, do you know that song?
You better, hold on to something or you'll get knocked around.
I was actually referring to an old 60s song.
Oh,
Whether you like gold, silver, or bronze.
Silver.
Knock Around has the sunglasses you need to enjoy the summer games, road trips, and all your outdoor activities in between. They've been making high-quality shades that don't break the bank since 2005, and they've actually been our personal go-tos for years.
That's right, and with over 25 different frame styles. Think about that. That's 25 different frame styles.
I don't have 25 different faces.
Right? There's something for the whole family, including tons of kids' pairs. So, whether you're looking to rock some red, white, and blues for Team USA or a timeless pair for your backyard barbecue, Knock Around has you covered.
All their lenses have UV 400 protection, and with polarized adult pairs starting at $28, you can get a few pairs to leave in your car, toss in your beach bag, or lend to a friend in need.
Now, Dave, I just bought a new pair of Campagnons.
Oh, nice.
Rainbow on black, Dave, featuring their new Noctera Performance Lens Tech and rubberized adjustable nose grips.
John, those are amazing. They make you look like you were from the 80s and the future all at the same time, which would have been
Back to the Future.
There it is.
There we go. I knew you'd like them, Dave. Dadville fans, don't squint through this summer's festivities. Check out knockaround.com and use code DADVILLE15 for 15% off your order.
That's DADVILLE15 for 15% off your order at knockaround.com.
He can say something absolutely crazy, and they say, well, that's just Charles being Charles.
Yeah,
but if I said it, then the next time you hear me on a microphone, I'm saying, go ahead, pump six, you're ready.
Hi, I'm Dave Barnes.
And I'm John McLaughlin.
And welcome to Dadville.
Dadville's a podcast where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of awesome dadding.
It's funny thoughts and deep talks.
So please, enjoy your time here in Dadville and enjoy this episode with Ernie Johnson.
Look at this guy.
Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me okay?
How do you not hear that voice and immediately I want to grab a basketball, grab a golf club, laugh with my friends. It's just,
I immediately feel unathletic and shameful. I feel like I'm going back to all the times I was cut from the basketball team.
I know.
One of John's best stories, Ernie, to me, and it gives me so much joy, was it your dad and you were in the car? What's the exact phrase?
It's a real moment in my life. I just went to a basketball tryout, like a YMCA basketball tryout, where everybody goes through. It's like you line up and you go through and you like hit your layup, and then you dribble through the chairs, and then you do a 3-pointer, and then you do another layup. Everybody does it, and everyone watches everyone. And I went through and I missed every shot, and I think I fell on one of the chairs. And I'm devastated, and I'm driving home with my dad, and he's like, you're not a basketball player by trade, But it was this moment where I was like, I think my dad has heard me talk about that, and he's like, I feel bad that I said that. I'm like, Dad, that's what I needed to hear. I needed to. The basketball thing's not happening for the McLaughlins.
Golly Moses.
It's Martin Short on SNL. I'm not a really strong swimmer.
I'm not the strongest swimmer. That is one of my favorite skits of all time. But you know what it speaks to, which is this hysterical dilemma we have as dads, where it's like, you've got this kid and they're looking at you and they're like, you can kind of speak into this dilemma that I'm in. And it's like, do you just go like, hey, man, if we're like reading the tea leaves here, I don't know if this is the thing for you, or do you just kind of do like what, anything you set your mind to, you can achieve. And I love that your dad in that moment, John, was like,
I think if my dad had said that in that moment, I would have been like, all right, so I can't trust this adult.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what's at risk in that moment,
Anyway.
Ernie, how you doing, man?
I'm great. Am I killing you guys with this?
No.
Window back here.
You're backlit so beautifully. You're glowing.
We can see that Drew Holcomb shirt perfectly.
Oh, look
there
at
you
Drew.
Go.
He'd be so proud. I had, just so you know the importance of this, I had this reminder in my phone starting like probably 3 months ago. And I set it for after the season was over, purposely because I'm smart. and it was text Holcomb about getting Ernie on Dadville. That's all it said. And so I would see it, and I'd be like, not yet. And so 3 days ago, whatever it was, it dinged, and it was like, now. And so, of course, I text Drew, and he's like, yeah, let me see if I can help. And then here we are, this beautiful
I'm pumped up to be here, man. This is awesome.
Well,
love you guys. Love it. I'm a huge music guy. Just absolutely love it. And all kinds of it, and what you guys have done is outstanding too. And I was looking at the schedule too. Dave, you're going to be down here in my neck of the woods at the City Winery.
That's right.
Where I saw Peter Mayer play a couple of years ago, and P.J. Morton played it too.
Oh my goodness!
Man. I bet that was a great show.
It's a cool venue, man. It really is.
Yeah.
And so my wife and I have been there a few times to see different folks and consider them friends too. So. This is awesome. I'm really.
So what we do at the beginning of Dadville is we start what we call the brag sheet, and it's kind of like the story of your life. And Ernie, this is you have a lot of things here. I even tried to be like somewhat judicious and take things out, but there's too many good things. Like if I skip it removes too many focal parts of the story. So here we go. Buckle up.
Any intro over 20 minutes makes me uncomfortable.
Well, I think you'll be comfortable.
After the intro, we've got 5 minutes of questions, and then we're out of time.
Yeah, we got some video clips, the whole thing. Okay, so here you go. I love this at the top one. Graduated summa cum laude from UGA, which is awesome, University of Georgia, with a degree in journalism. First job was at WACQ-FM in Athens. Which was that like REM? Are they even in the stratosphere at that point, or is that before then?
That's before then.
Okay, because that season in Athens was about to pop off between all those Indigo Girls. Them was Widespread Athens. There was all those bands from Athens that were so cool back then,
and that was all before me. It was like I always get out of town just before it gets good.
Yeah, I know that life. Joined Turner Sports in '89. Started hosting Inside the NBA in '90. From 93 to 96, called Atlanta Braves games with his father, which, come on, man. I mean, come on. That's the best. That's so cool. I saw a really fun, cute clip of you where it did like one of your first interviews or whatever, and you're holding it, and then your dad comes in frame, and it's he's right here. Let's ask him. And I was like, it makes all of my dad feelings tingly. So 6-time winner, incredible. 6-time winner of the Sports Emmy Award for Best Studio Host. Over the years, he's covered PGA. This is incredible, by the way. PGA, Wimbledon, NFL, Goodwill Games, college football, 92, 94, and 2000 Olympics, and the World Cup, which I'm a huge soccer fan. So when I saw that, I got really... Where was 90? Was that...
Italy.
Gosh, that's so cool. Has appeared in the NBA 2K video game since 2014. I have a million questions about that too. Released his memoir, Unscripted, The Unpredictable Moments That Make Life Extraordinary in 2017. 2021 winner of the National Sports Media Association National Sportscaster of the Year. 2023 inductee into the Sports Broadcasting Hall of Fame. Currently, he's a studio host for Major League Baseball on TBS, hosts Inside the NBA for TNT with Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, and Kenny Smith, some guys who've done some small things with their basketball careers, and NBA TV, and contributes to the joint coverage for the NCAA Division I men's basketball tournament for TNT Sports and CBS Sports. And that's just, it still feels like a small part of what you've done. I mean, that is unbelievable, man. I mean, like, what does it feel like hearing that?
Makes me feel very old. That's a lot of ground you covered there, Dave. Because and hey, I would have guessed that I'd still be doing this, after that many years. Because you never know. You embark on something and you want to see how far it's going to take you. Is TV going to work? Because I want to be a baseball player.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, because your dad had played, and
and so I've up until college. I played a year of baseball at Georgia, and walked on as a sophomore, and was told to walk off walked on as a freshman, was told to walk off as a sophomore. That's my one glorious year wearing the red and black. But then really, it's like what everybody gets to a point where they're like, what am I going to do? And gave this a try, working at the campus radio station at Georgia, and getting into the games for free, and talking sports on the radio, and then you just see where it's going to take you. And so luckily it worked out.
Was that something with your dad doing that as you grew up, which I think is just such a cool, I don't know if you know Cody Fry's music, but Cody's a really good friend of ours, and his dad, he's a conductor and he's an artist and he sings and he writes all these things. But we were talking about the same thing because his dad was a conductor and still is in Chicago. And so I'm always so amazed by, kids that do what their parents did because it's such a cool, clear. But I mean, growing up in that house, was it just kind of sports all the time? Was that like a big language that y'all spoke? Is that something y'all spent a lot of time doing and paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, it was big, and it wasn't really something that I thought I was, when you talk about like following in your dad's footsteps, I wanted to be the player because he was a player back in the 50s. Mm-hmm. And I really didn't think much about sportscasting. I said, if I don't make it as a baseball player, I could be an English teacher and a baseball coach in high school. I said, that would be a lot of fun. Keep my hand in the game. And also I love English, love writing. And I said, that would be okay. Then I did this and got bit, and it was like, I think this is better than teaching English, and especially when you consider it through so many years. I mean, from Macon, Georgia, to Spartanburg, South Carolina, to Atlanta, eventually to the ABC station here, and then at Turner. I never thought I'd be somewhere for 35 years doing the same job. I've been at Turner since 1989, and so. It's still, to me, one of these step back and look at it and say, can you believe this is happening? Mm-hmm. And it's still that way for me. And because and a lot of that's because I've gotten to work with such great people over the years and know that when I go to work, I'm going to laugh. Not everybody can say that.
Yeah. So when you were starting out in your broadcasting, obviously your dad did that for years in Atlanta. Like, were you trying to... At that point, you're obviously following in his footsteps. Were you trying to like differentiate yourself like stylistically, or like how, or were you like, no, I'm going to do it by the book the way my dad did it?
No, it's a great question because I think a lot of it depends on what your job is. I wasn't doing play-by-play at the time. I was I was the weekend sports anchor at Channel 2 in Atlanta, or I was anchoring the news in Macon and in Spartanburg. And so it's a totally different feel. So it wasn't like it would have been really, if I'm calling games, it's kind of like the Carries, when Skip was still around and Chip was doing games, and then Josh is, all these Carries are doing games, and people are going to say, wow, he sounds like his dad, or he sounds like his grandpa, or anything like that. But what I was doing wasn't what my dad was doing at the time. So I didn't have to worry stylistically right there, but my dad gave me the best advice of all time. He just said, no matter what, just be yourself. And so I think, because I think one of the mistakes a lot of folks make when they get on the air is that, okay, now I've got to be radio man, or I have to be TV guy, and I have to talk like this. And no, it's just like when you hear me or you heard my dad, it was like, I had so many people come up to me and say, hey, I ran into your dad at the drugstore the other day. He sounded exactly like he does when he's calling a Braves game when he was talking to me. I said, well, that's what he does. That's what we all do. And so I still get a great degree of satisfaction when somebody says that to me when they're watching the NBA, or a kid who's playing 2K and says, you sound just like you do on a video game. I said, well, it's who I am.
Right.
I'm sorry.
That's my voice. Well, one of the things that Dave and I talked about a lot as we were prepping is you have like your humanity comes through in your broadcasting, in a show that ostensibly it's not like you're going to expect that necessarily. You're coming to the show, expecting to hear highlights of what happened in the game and like thoughts on like trades and etc. What's happening in NBA, let's say. But your humanity really does come through in a really beautiful way.
That's just, again, it goes back to being yourself. And I think we're doing a basketball show inside the NBA, which sometimes centers on basketball, but a lot of times it's everything else.
Yeah.
And that gives you an opportunity by how you react to various stories or what's going on in the world to kind of voice your opinion and people kind of see the real you. And so I think that's kind of where that comes from. And at the same time, I think, that show is what I do. It's not who I am. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be enough things that go on in the world that give you an opportunity to kind of tell people where you come from. Mm-hmm. And in this day and age, anytime you can try to be positive and spread some of that out here, that we get a little more of this and a little less of this,
Amen.
Then I think, I'm thankful that I have that platform to do that.
Did you always feel like you had the latitude to do that? I mean, from the outside looking in, I would guess like that's some wiggle room you would have to earn. You know what I mean?
I think so. I think that like when you're first starting out, you just don't want to do anything that's going to get you canned.
Exactly.
It's like if you and to me, it's always been if the thought process is, should I say this? You probably shouldn't. It's just like it's just what I tell my kids. I said, if you're having a second, if you and your friends are out and and somebody has an idea, we should do this. If there's anything in your mind that says not, then the answer is no, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
But and I've kind of felt that way too a lot of times in the job that we do. But I think after years and years, you get a little bit of equity built up where you feel like people are familiar with you enough that you've talked about things on the air enough that you feel comfortable giving your opinion. But when you first start out, it's like, you've been doing this for 2 years. Who are you to tell me what you think about this, and why does that matter?
Right.
So yeah, I think you do build up a little bit of that from just from longevity.
Hey, is it Dave?
Yeah, Dave.
It's Dave.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's one of the.
Wait, did you say Dane?
Dane? Yeah.
No, Dave.
Has it been Dave this whole time?
Wait, are you Dave?
No. I mean, I go by Dane sometimes, but only. I just wanted to make sure you weren't going by Dane.
Sometimes the first cover band you're in?
No, it wasn't the first. Listen, Dane.
Yeah.
If I've said it once,
okay.
I've said it 1,000 times. It takes a village to raise a baby, which means delegation is key. Am I right?
You're right, Dane. You know what each role that I don't want to play? If there's a role, I'm going to tell you the one I'm always avoiding.
I'll say it with you.
Diaper run girl.
Or either one.
Yeah. John, with Hello Bello, you don't have to. No one has to, John.
That's why I love Hello Bello. With their ultra-convenient diaper bundle subscription service that includes 7 packs of diapers. You thought I was going to say 5.
Yeah.
And 4 packs of plant-based wipes. You thought I was going to say 2.
Yeah.
You'll never run out of supplies. And better yet, they're delivered right to your door, not down the street, which still would be amazing. Nope. Set, change, and cancel your delivery schedule whenever you want.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how many times I could have used Hello Bello when our kids were in diapers. That's what I'm thinking about right now.
So true, Dane.
Yeah.
That's probably why it was named Best Diaper Subscription by New York Magazine and was the winner of the 2022 Good Housekeeping Parenting Award.
Ooh.
Hello Bello.
Hello.
Will keep you well stocked on diapers and wipes.
Plus, it's a great price because, can I tell you why? I was just going to stop there. Okay.
Please.
Because Hello Bello believes all families deserve premium, affordable baby products.
Amen. Go to hellobello.com/dadville to get 30% off. You thought I was going to say 25. 30% off your first customized bundle and a full-size freebie product of your choice.
That's hellobello.com/dadville to start bundling with 30% off your first order.
Don't forget, that's hellobello.com/dadville.
So I'm curious because you say that so well. This is something I wanted to ask you. Like when you think, so on the surface with what you do, like John said so well, you're announcing, you're commentating, you're giving opinion, you're giving thoughts about what's happening in the game, or you're doing breakdowns and things like that. But what do you feel is like the layer 2 job description of what you do? Because like if you think about me and John, Drew, all of our friends, we're trying to kind of like bottle up emotion. and talk about the human experience to evoke an emotion or nostalgia in someone and take them to a place so they can feel things, etc. Because it is just announcing, but it's not just that, right? Like John said, you bring this humanity to it. How would you describe sort of like the layer 2 of what you're trying to do when you're on air?
From the number one thing is to realize why you're sitting there, and for us, and I'm just taking inside the NBA as an example. But I could also say, look, if I'm doing play-by-play on a baseball game, I know why people are tuned in. It's because of the game. It's not because of you. And that's one thing my dad always taught me, too. He says, you're never bigger than the event you're covering.
Wow. What a great point.
Don't make it about you. Because we've all worked with folks who have never thought that way.
Yeah.
It's always been, I'm doing the game. And I guess that's why people are tuning in. No, it's not. I mean, they're interested in the sport. They love our show because it's so crazy, and because you never know if Charles and Chuck are going to start an international incident before the night's over. So, to an extent, the pregame, postgame, halftime shows, they are kind of watching just to see what's going to happen there.
Right.
But I think Charles changed the landscape of the shows that we do. Simply because he didn't want to be painted into this, okay, now we're talking about the Clippers and Bucks playing, and then we're talking about this game, and then we're talking about this game. But part of his deal when he was a player, he was the most quotable guy out there.
Yeah.
Thankfully for us, that never changed when he got behind, in front of the camera. Because a lot of folks will change. The red light goes on, and they're a little, but Chuck's always let it fly. So he kind of changed the whole landscape for these kind of shows, and now everything was in play. If the game was terrible, he was going to say the game's terrible, let's talk about something else. And for me, coming up as a guy who was always a highlight show guy, I was like, oh, geez, what are we going to do now? But that's been, I think it's allowed us all the latitude to let people see who you are.
Yeah.
Chuck is always on me about, he says, he'll tell people, Ernie's the funniest guy on the crew. He's just afraid to say some stuff. And I'm like, you're probably right. I said, I don't feel like I have the Charles Barkley diplomatic immunity. That,
right.
That's right.
He can say something absolutely crazy, and they say, well, that's just Charles being Charles.
Yeah.
But if I said it, then the next time you hear me on a microphone, I'm saying, go ahead, pump 6, you're ready. So I have to realize that, but it's and again there are a lot of layers to the show, and every show is different. That's why it's fun to go to work.
Yeah.
Well, what are some of the challenges? Like, what would you say? Obviously, when you watch Inside the NBA, it seems effortless. It seems unscripted. It's it is working. The what we're seeing on camera is like, this is what you guys intended it to be. You guys are so great. But what are my only experience with what you do is this, what Dave and I do. We're musicians who started a podcast 4 years ago. And, you learn how to craft sort of a conversation and an interview, and there are multiple voices, and when should I jump in here and there? And so what's your experience behind the camera like that? Like, what are the challenges of it? What was hard in the beginning that maybe isn't hard anymore? And what's that like?
I'll go back to when I started hosting the show, and a lot of times it was just me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is before we had before we had me and Chuck Kenny and Shaq. And so it was really just a highlight-driven show. It was just like, okay, let's go from this game to this game to this game, and here's a story about somebody who just signed a contract, and here's a story about somebody who's hurt, and now let's go to break. And every now and then you try to, you throw something in there. You thought, maybe this is kind of a funny line. And but you got a few guys running camera.
Yeah, there's no
manager, and they're always told to shh, be. So you don't know if it landed or not.
Yeah, God, that would drive me crazy.
Yeah. And I wonder if that was a good line. And then you say, well, I guess I'll have to pick up a USA Today on Monday and see if Rudy Martzke said that was a good line.
That is so bizarre, by the way.
It
Gosh,
is.
that's bizarre.
And so having those, I went from working with Cheryl Miller, Reggie Theus, Dick Versace, an old coach, and then me and Kenny, and then you throw Charles in there, and then eventually Shaq. But what that allows you to do is it just gives you this living room feel where here are four guys who are hoop fans.
Yeah.
Three of whom played the game at the highest level.
Yeah.
And the other guy is a guy who got cut from the baseball team, but does have a journalism degree.
You were
and they're
asked
just
to
sitting
walk
around-
off. That you weren't
Yeah,
cut.
Yeah, let's get that right. Let's
Yeah,
get that
and they're just sitting around watching the game, and nobody's asking for permission to talk. I mean, you think about nights where you and your friends are watching something. It doesn't have to be a basketball game; could be anything. Nobody is saying during the commercial break, "Okay, look, when we come back, Dave, you bring this up. John, you laugh at it, and then let's see if Annie, then you say this, and Amy, you laugh, and then John, you take us to break."
And then we'll cut. To
Yeah. It's like, yeah, and I need to know how long that comment's going to be.
It's like the Truman Show.
Yeah, so we can. We are sitting here. This thing starts, and we've got kind of the producers and I have kind of a game plan of knowing what we have in the saddlebags that night. Okay, we could go here, we could go this. Hey, this is the anniversary of Chuck doing this. We'll break out some video at some point of that.
Gosh.
But then as the show was about to start live, hey, welcome. It's and then Charles says, "I got to get something off of my chest."
Like, here we go.
All right,
Yeah.
What is it? And you're kind of okay. What is it? And they can take the show in a totally different direction, and that's the great part about it, guys.
So great.
And I think that's what people relate to is that. In the living room, nobody knows what somebody's going to say next. Or sometimes it's whoever's speaking the loudest gets heard.
Right.
Sure.
And if somebody says something stupid, the other people are going to jump on them. That's what we do.
That's
Right,
what it is.
right.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of times the funniest stuff that happens there is just organic. We can cook up some things like at the end of the show that, okay, this is going to take a little production, but we're going to pull it off. But those guys never know what it is.
Yeah.
Because we don't invite them to the production meeting. We don't want them to know what's happening.
That's so
We just want
crazy.
genuine reactions.
So like in those, one of the things that I'm always curious about with those kind of shows is, you're sitting, as you said, so clearly you're sitting with three legends of the game. I mean, these guys weren't just like we played on teams. They're incredible players. Do y'all watch? I mean, this is a logistics question. Are you watching some of the games together at any point? Or y'all kind of, is there ever like you're sitting, seeing the same game and you're hearing comments and then you get back together in the thing and talk about it? Or is that?
That part of it has kind of morphed over the years. Early on, we would sit there in the green room and, watch our game and the other games that are going on. Not really picking anything apart, but sometimes you just hear something and say, I might want to revisit that at halftime. But as technology has grown and as the information at your disposal has increased, I find it much easier for me to do my job by going to my office once we get off the air while the game is going on, because I want to be able to look at something on Basketball Reference, and I want to be able to look at this highlight or this game that's going on. I want to be able to look at things and chart the game that we have. And I can't do that when I'm in there with the rest of the guys because they're in there, sales folks are in there, marketing people are stopping by, social people are in there. There's a lot of discussions about who's got rat beef. And it's like, I can't concentrate on any of this. And so I need to kind of isolate myself so I can get into the game and what's going on. Because somebody will do something in a game or somebody will show up who's like a fringe player who will have some big first half. And I'm like, I need to look this guy up and see a little more about him. Because I know if I don't, then Chuck's going to say, where did this guy come from?
Yeah, and you got to know.
Underdog research. So I'm constantly kind of, I'm always trying to anticipate what is the question going to be. If a player is an international player, where's he from? Okay, boom. What's that near? So I'm thinking in those terms a lot of times as I do this basketball show.
So funny.
So again,
It's almost like announcing with children. And I mean that the most respectful, but just a constant curiosity that you're sort of like, oh, shoot, everybody's looking at me. I need to know the answer to this.
Dave, you know what I've had a lot of people try to describe my role on that show where they come, hey, you're the ringmaster, you're the point guard, you're the traffic cop.
Yeah.
The best one of all time, and I don't remember who told me, who said, you're the dad driving cross country with these three guys in the back seat saying, if I hear one more peep,
Yeah, that's right.
I am turning this thing around. That's me.
It's so cool. I think something that would be really cool to me about what you do is in those moments of sort of like clarity, as much as these guys are, I mean, they're so that the image when I think of y'all's show that I immediately start laughing about is Kenny pushing Shaq into the Christmas tree. I mean, that is like, to me, it's the show. It's just like, you never know what's going to happen. It's so fun.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could talk about that forever, just how much I think it has changed. As you said, I mean, I think Charles being who he is has changed things, but I think you guys have just really, you've said, hey, because I think, Sports Center's always been great at making things light and fun. Like, I mean, they've had a litany of just hysterical and still have so many great hosts that are so fun. But I think y'all's is different because it's long format. So it's not quick cuts. It's like, this is this really entertaining, fun show that's absolutely landing the plane on what it's trying to do. But it really has changed, I think, how a lot of people experience what y'all are doing. It doesn't feel quite as... But I think at the same time, sitting next to these guys, I can't imagine how cool it would be in those moments where you hear the expertise of someone with only a thought that someone that has played at the level these guys have played at could be able to say. Where... That would, like, I had the chance to watch a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, who's a friend of mine, once. And just sitting next to him at one point, I was like, all right, because we're chit-chatting and, laughing and cutting up. And I was like, all right, for these 4 downs, I want you to tell me what you're seeing. And I'm telling you, in my grown adult life, I think it is one of my top 20 moments just because I'm watching something and experience like I am, but then his expertise to go, okay, that's a dime package. Now what he's going to do is hand off. And it was every single play went exactly like he said it would.
It's amazing, isn't it?
And so you get to sit next to these 3 guys who, you're watching the game and they're watching the game. But if you really are like, hey, Shaq, tell me what's happening. And he's like, I can tell you everything that's happening. It's like, wow, that's cool. That level of knowledge.
No, it is. It's and watching with them and for this many years too. No, there are nuances to the game that you don't really think about. I can look at a play one way as a fan.
Yes, there you go. That's what I mean.
As a sportscaster, and then Kenny can look at the same play and say, no, here's what you got to see.
Yeah.
This guy should have never been here to do that.
Yes.
Oh, really? Okay. And we'll be right back.
Yeah.
So it's like, so I try not to overstep where I am, and see nobody. And I've said it a million times. If a game's coming right down to it, nobody at home cares what I think about what a team is saying with 1.6 seconds left in the huddle. But these 3 guys I'm with have all been there. So what's being said. And so I think that's. Knowing your role, I think, is maybe the most important part of my job. And I'm trying to get us from point A to point B to point C. I'm trying to have done the research that will spark conversation. But I don't want to say, I really need to weigh in more like as a guy who played when I didn't play. I'm trying to make these guys look as good as they can and bring out their best.
But what you were describing earlier about how when you go to the office and you're watching the game at a deep level, analytical level, and this rookie's having a great game, and you're researching his hometown, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's like anything. There's so much nuance to anything that on the surface, if you don't know anything about it, it seems, one-dimensional or whatever. But that's an example of what you're doing that is so deep that if you're just watching the show, you don't know that all those wheels have been turning since the game's been going, and then halftime hits, and like you've got this agenda in your mind, and at the same time you got to be flexible because Charles just said something that's going to take us in a different direction. But I'm curious, like when the cameras come on, like when Dave and I are doing these interviews, and we start the interview, obviously we want to highlight our guests. We want to hear your stories, et cetera, et cetera. And we have our goals and we have our fears. And I have one of my fears, like something that could be like the worst possible thing that I could do in this podcast and every podcast that we do, is I don't want to open my mouth and say something that is just completely unnecessary. And it just sort of like brings the conversation to a halt, and then everyone looks at each other, and then we kind of pick up and we move on, and the listener's like, well, that was totally not necessary. Why would he say? That's my fear. Do you have any of those in the back of your mind where before the cameras turn on, you're like, don't do this, Ernie?
You know what? It's I can't go on the air thinking that, but it has to just be understood, especially these days, that live on the air, everything is being spit back out at you instantaneously. You say one thing, you misspeak for a second, a half a second.
Twitter's
and
lighted up.
It can cost you everything.
Yeah.
That's the way it is these days. There are guys who have made, men and women both, who have made a mistake on the air. Something that if I could have a do-over, but it's live. And then it's, all right, let's see what the jury is going to say about your future as a broadcaster.
Yeah.
Was this bad enough to get you off the air? Or is this hey, we'll forgive him, we'll forgive her, we think it was an honest mistake, and you see it all the time. So, yeah, it's hard to do the job if you're afraid. Well, I better not say this, but sometimes it's just a slip of the tongue that can be, hey, did he say this? And then somebody out there says, hey, did he just say this?
Yeah.
No, I didn't say that. And then, it's scary.
Yeah.
It really is. So it's not that I'm going to say something stupid.
Yeah.
It's that I'm going to say something that is offensive in somebody's eyes.
Yeah.
But that's because, and again, I'm now that you've said that, I'm scared to death to go back.
Yeah,
on
John,
the air.
jeez. Golly. Talk about inappropriate.
So now the worst thing I could do is say something that could make our guests scared for the rest of their career.
Then say something. So I'm curious to your point about that. Like when you are, I'm so fascinated by this. I know nothing about this world. So if you were calling a game, right? You're up there, you're doing the thing. What is it? What is hard about that one? And then what is the thing that like most people don't understand about what you're doing? In other words, like if I watch a ton of soccer, and I'm always like, I get kind of giggly when you can hear like they're kind of doing, oh, Ray's got the ball. And then I'll notice like, God, nobody said anything for like 20 seconds, which is great. That's fine. Just watching the game. And then, a guy will be like, I was in Tesco the other day and bumped into his mother, and I'm always like, oh, that's a fun little story. But I'm always like, I wonder how guys like you, when you're sitting there, like, what's the posture? What are you like? Okay, let's stay away from any of this, but man, give them a lot of that, and then what is it you're thinking about, and then what is it like we wouldn't know about that?
Yeah. Well, it's like I'll go back to in the years that I was doing play-by-play, and that was baseball and golf.
Yeah.
And again, these are two sports that do give you a little opportunity to tell.
Yeah.
Well, baseball more than golf, because in golf they just want to keep throwing shots at you.
Yeah.
And it's like the producer's in your ear, and so like. This is a little inside baseball, but we're talking golf. So when I'm doing the PGA Championship, when we're working with CBS, okay, so you got me and Ian Baker Finch on one side of the tower, and then CBS would have Jim Nantz and somebody else, Jim Nantz and Trevor, Jim Nantz and whoever. They'd have two guys, we'd have two guys for this like 10-hour day. And so the instructions you're given, the producer says, all right, TNT, you guys got the even holes. CBS, you got the odd holes.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So you know that. And so, when the producer says, go to 6. So, that's an even hole. That's us. All right.
No way.
Yeah. So it's like, And so and then we take the action there, and as we're saying, okay, so this putt, there's his putt for par, and he remains at 3 under, and you hear in your ear to 9, and we go to the 9th, boom, and so that's an odd number hole, so boom, they do it. So it's that kind of a vibe, but the shots are coming at you pretty fast. And I remember the first time I ever did golf, and I was working with Frank Cherkinian, who was a legendary golf producer, and I had sat down with Vern Lundquist in a golf cart in L.A., asking him, I said, look, I just need a little bit of a briefing from you. What am I about to get into here? It's 1995. I'm doing golf for the first time. He says, be a caption writer. That's all you got to do. Be a caption writer.
Wow.
He said, people are watching it. And he said, and know that Frank does not like you talking when he's changing shots or missing the sound of the ball, of the golf ball and the club face.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to talk over that.
People want to hear what it sounds like, and they can tell if a shot's thin or if it's fat or anything like that. So I'm saying, okay, I can do it. So sure enough, we're doing the PGA in 95, and I'm sitting in there. I'm spelling Vern for about an hour, giving him a little time off. And I'm starting to get the feel a little bit, and I'm starting to feel comfortable. And I'm going to slide a little story in here about Peter Jacobsen from one of the practice rounds. And so I was talking to Peter Jacobsen as he was playing this hole the other day, and I hear Frank, and he's going to 7, and what Peter was saying, to 7, let's go to 7. And it's like. And that's all I needed. I don't need war and peace. When you hear a shot, go.
Oh my gosh.
And a couple other times I stepped on him as the guy was in his backswing, and I was like, and Corey Pavin here at the 6th, and I buried the contact. Shut up! And I'm like, okay. This is really fun.
That is unbelievable.
That is so fascinating. I've never once thought about that. But of course, you always hear the contact on the ball.
Yeah, and that's what, so I know this is like a long answer, but like when you're doing a baseball game, you've got more opportunity.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's not even going from this to something totally different.
Yeah.
So when a guy's at the plate and you've got a good story about him, you can weave that in.
Yeah.
And so that's all feel, but I think one of the big problems is folks who fall in love with their own voice and just think that more is better when it's
cut to 7. I'm just going to hear that voice.
Yeah, less is more. A lot of times it's like you're watching the game.
Yeah,
I can provide a few things, but I don't need to tell you every time that, hey, that was just low. You saw that, and so I think sometimes you just let it breathe, and especially the big moments. You can say, hey, there's a drive, that ball is crushed to left, and then let the crowd and let everything else take control of it. So that's kind of the mindset, and it's again when you're working with whoever it is. I did a lot of games with Cal Ripken and Dennis Eckersley and Ron Darling and these guys, and it was just it was so much fun just because, again, these are the guys who played the game and have this great appreciation for the game and this great knowledge of the game that you just want to. You're learning stuff a lot of times as you're looking at them. Say, man, he cannot control that breaking ball, Ron. Oh, I've been there. And it's like that's what you're trying to do. Again, you're having a conversation that you guys are privy to.
It's kind of like you're scoring a film in real time a little bit.
Yeah, that's
like in those big moments. It's like, how much are you going to talk? How much are you going to just let the? Yeah, that's like the score of the film.
And you know what? And here's the deal. It's like when my dad and I used to watch sports together. And, growing up and even when I was married and we'd go over and hang out with my mom and dad and watching a game with a broadcaster, and now we're both broadcasters. It's like the buttons that would get pushed when he was watching it was always somebody who's talking too much.
That's so interesting.
And my dad would just, take a breath. Hey, take a play off. I don't need to, and I think a lot of that's been lost. I think a lot of times, a lot of analysts on the air and a lot of feel like there has to be this wall-to-wall sound. Look, just because somebody got stopped at the line on a 2nd and 1, I don't need chapter and verse on why it didn't work.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, that play went for nothing. Okay, I'm going to sit this one out. You don't need me to tell you that he had no blocking.
Well, that's we could see it. The things that I think about with what you're doing, I'm always amazed, as you just said, that you are not just, I mean, I think for those of us who don't know that space, like when we watch you do, and you guys on your shows and all the ways you've done this, do it so well, you forget the whole time you got somebody in your ear. I can't imagine the focus you have to have, because you're talking, you're going, and that's a great point. Like, all right, we got 1 minute, and you got it. Like that enough makes me sweat and like TT my pants a little bit. But then two, the thing, it's so funny. We watch a lot of Arsenal games. We're a big Arsenal FC family. This is embarrassing, Ernie, but it's the truth. And it shows how important what you do is. As much as you say, don't do games that matter a lot to me, I will mute the announcers because they get me so riled up in a good or bad way. Like, it's hysterical. I had to tell my friends, I was like, look, this is probably an idol in my life, but like, my buddy mom was like, bro, I'm getting too stressed these games. I was like, can I tell you a hack I figured out? If you just mute the announcers, it's so less stressful. Because you just watch it and you take it in as it's happening, as opposed to like, if they don't make this, they drop to third. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to. So it's hysterical because as much as it feels like you're just announcing, you guys, like John said, you're really creating this emotional experience. Like if a putt is gorgeous and you guys, the way you set it up can be great. Hits a home run, the way it's like you feel it more as a fan. And so as much as it is play-by-play or whatever you want to call it, you do have this ability to really impact the viewer. It's really crazy.
Yeah, it's it's strange too, because the fan broadcaster relationship is interesting, and I've been on that side of it where somebody doesn't, you're doing a baseball playoff series and the fans of one team are convinced that you're rooting for the other side. Yeah. Because you got more excited when this guy hit a homer than when this guy hit a homer. Well, there was maybe some excitement in my voice when this guy broke a scoreless tie with a 3-run homer.
Right.
Than when your guy hit a 2-run shot in an 11-0 game.
Right.
And so maybe the degree of it, but it's, and I've tried to explain, we don't care who wins. We just want a compelling, competitive game. We want you on the edge of your seat. We want you to be watching in the ninth inning and saying, man, what the heck is going to happen here? But there is no way. It's funny because I would get it from both sides. A game would be over. Yeah. I can't believe how much he's rooting for that team. And the other guy's like, man, he hates us. You must be doing something right, because you both think and you both think I'm rooting for the other guy. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic.
Ernie, if I had to pick, like if this podcast could only be like 2 minutes long and we could only ask one question to our guests who are either musicians or actors or in broadcasting or whatever, I feel guilty saying it, but I kind of think my one question would be, give me some on-air mishap, wonderfully terrible, something went wrong stories. They're my favorite thing in the whole world. And I mean, you've got to have a plethora of these stories.
I've got so many of those. And, when you come up through local news,
that's like a whole other.
I accumulated such a my own blooper reel of just stuff that happened in our shop, and so it didn't have to just be my mistake. Because the word gets out, you're watching something. It's like, man, did you see the report on? Did you see what happened? Yeah. And so that goes on the blooper reel, because for a long time in Atlanta, we used to have an event called the Gorilla Ball, and I don't know why it was called the Gorilla Ball, but channels 2, 5, and 11, we would all pick a night, and we'd all gather someplace with our blooper reels.
Oh, I love that.
That's such a great idea.
So there was a blooper reel from Channel 5. There was one from Channel 2. There was, and a lot of times the person making the mistake is we'd show it on a big screen and we'd be, and we would just be, here we are, we're all competitors, but we are howling at each other. Yeah. And then if you'd see something come up, I know where this is going. This is me. This is going to be bad.
That's amazing.
And then you listen to the guffaws in the room. This was something. This is back in the '80s when they used to do this, and it was just tremendous. But if you're asking about mistakes, I've made. There are times I've gotten tongue-tied on the air. There was a time in Spartanburg that I still remember that I got so tongue-tied and tried to say a phrase about 5 different times. It just got worse every time, and you feel like that moment is lasting about a week and a half.
Oh,
people are just laughing at you.
Yeah,
and it was. And a huge fly got in the studio and wouldn't leave me alone, landed on my cheek. And these things happen. But it's, and I'll tell you one, this was kind of bizarre. I was working in Atlanta, and there had been some kind of a rally where they were giving away condoms. Okay? One of these condoms got inflated. And our weather guy was doing the weather outside that day.
Oh, no.
And picked it up. Not knowing what it was. But everybody in the newsroom knew what it was.
Oh, no.
And he's like, I was just playing with this weather balloon out here.
Oh, no.
Yes. And he does his forecast. And they come back to the 2 anchors.
Oh, and they're done.
So you guys enjoy your weekend. It's going to be beautiful for whatever you want to do. And the news anchor says, we'll come out and chase those weather balloons with you. It's the stuff happens. And if it had happened now, it would have been on there it would be on every social media platform.
Oh, my gracious.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So tell me this. How on earth have you managed to have the career you've had?
I don't know.
In the marriage you've had, and then you look at 6 kids. You've been married for 42 years. I'm just so fascinated with your ability. And I want to say this. Something that was really amazing as I was watching all these videos about you and that you had done. The respect that people have for you in the industry is just so. There's so much love for you and who you are and your character, and so I'm fascinated with this thing that you've been able to craft because you've been a dad, you've been a husband, you've been an anchor, you've been a friend, you've been a contemporary and a peer and an expert now of these things. Like when you think about juggling those things, like how have you done that?
I don't know. I think we all. At some point, we're all going through that juggling act, and especially like when you're early in your career and you're just trying to get a foothold into what you want to do. It's like it takes over your life, and to me, it was always easier when I first started out before I got married, where I could do that. I could make my job everything. And then you find out, man, you guys know, you find out once you get married or you have kids, and it's like, wow, there's so much more out here. And I think for me, the job kind of took its rightful place, which wasn't up here. It was down here. It was still important to me. I still had to do it with my absolute best. But I also know that the role of husband and father was so much bigger, and so I think I still went at my job with that same passion, but I just felt I had to be, and I just feel, and I talk to dads all the time, you got to be intentional about making sure that those folks who are most important in your life know that they are, and then so like. There were times where, I'm going to have to miss this because I can't be there because I got to work. But there were times where maybe I used work as kind of a fallback. It's a work day, so I can't possibly be at lunch to watch with my 6-year-old. You know what? I probably could if I did a little more work early that day, and then I took the time off and I was there. I've got one of the greatest pictures in my office of my daughter Carmen, who I surprised at the Atlanta Zoo one day because I looked at my schedule and I said, I can actually take an hour here and go see her field trip. And somebody had taken a picture as she had turned around and was like, and I was like, you have to be intentional, and they have to, and that's in the devotion to your marriage and to your kids. And it's like, it's not going to be easy, and there are going to be times where we can't be there.
Yeah.
And I grew up with a dad who was doing baseball and was gone half the time. And so I realized it, but I also never forgot those times where he went the extra mile and said, man, I didn't think he was going to be able to be here. And he was.
Yeah.
So I think those are the moments you gotta really make sure that you can be there and not say, well, it's a work day, sorry.
Yeah.
It may be. Or just, you got to think outside the box. You got to think, hey, what's going to make somebody's day? What's going to make Cheryl's day today? Okay, it may be a work day, but look, I did this around the house before I went to work. It's just stuff, guys. You know it. It's just like what things that your kids or your wife will appreciate.
Well, to me, I mean, it says, I don't know that I would need to know much more about a man who has the career that you've had, but forget about the career. I mean, the videos that I've watched over the last couple of days of your colleagues and people you've worked with, the way that they speak about you, the things that they, talk about, the things that you have done for them, the fact that, you have 6 kids, you've been married for 42 years. I mean, it says so much about you. And one thing I wanted to ask is, you lost your son a couple years ago, and we had an interview with Stephen Curtis Chapman a couple years ago, and to me, it's one of the best moments we've had on this podcast was speaking to him about losing his daughter and specifically the grieving process and what was helpful for him. And so I'm curious, through this process of losing your son, has there been anything that has sort of helped you through the grieving process? It's always a difficult thing being a friend of someone who's lost someone, and we all have friends who have lost someone. It's an awkward thing. You don't know what to do. You never know what to say. There's never a right thing to say. But is there any maybe advice that you would have for those of us walking through the world, who are living life with people who have lost someone that could maybe help?
I don't know about advice. I'm probably the worst guy to go to for advice on that. But I remember when that happened with Stephen. Because he and I got a bit of a relationship and have known each other for years. And, we have 6 kids. We adopted 4 of our 6 kids. And I can still remember having a conversation with Stephen when he was considering adopting for the first time.
Yeah.
He was like, we're thinking about going to China. Go. What's holding you back? It's like, and then, I remember I was working PGA Championship that summer when I saw that what had happened. And I was just heartbroken. And I couldn't even begin to put myself in where he is. And this guy said that, if anybody can come close to handling it's a guy with this much foundation and spiritual grounding, it'll be Stephen. But man, nothing prepares you.
Yeah.
Look, that was for him. That was just something. This just happened right out of the blue, and was just one of these like, wow. I'm, with Michael, Cheryl and I knew since when we adopted him that he had this fatal disease. That they're never going to cure this.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor said he's probably not going to get out of his teens.
Wow.
So we're raising him. I'm not saying that you're anticipating this, but it's always in the back of your mind as you see muscular dystrophy progress, and you say, okay, now we're at this stage. Okay, now he can't walk anymore. Now he's in a wheelchair. Now he's, and so, and the lungs and the heart, and then you see, we almost lost him in his 20s because of because he got pneumonia, and that's when they had to put him on trach. So he's on a ventilator for the last 10 years of his life, and you're just trying to make every day great.
Mm-hmm.
You're realizing the responsibility that you took on, the rewards that you've gotten, and you go from this day to this day to this day. And then there was that one day in 2022 when it stopped. When for some reason it gave out.
Yeah.
And knowing that it was going to happen at some point doesn't make it any easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are days when things are great, and there are other days where I'm walking around crushed, and I don't know why. Maybe I just saw something that reminded me of him, and it just crushed me. And it happens, and I just had to allow myself to say, okay, today's going to be one of those days that sucks, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to play it off. I'm not going to say, hey, oh, no, everything's great. Oh, no, come on. No, that was... Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, it's always going to hurt, but it's always... but there are all these awesome memories that we've had. And, I mean... That's how I met Drew. I mean, I met Drew through the death of my son.
And one of his songs was Michael's favorite song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He loved family. We all love, this guy to me, you see, Drew is Ted Lasso. Okay. He's like, he's got these songs that all have that have a message to them, that have kind of a feeling to them. And it's like, you know what? Everything's not bad in the world. This is good.
Yeah.
So we loved family, and we played it at Michael's service. We played it at the end of the service, and we all got up on the stage and danced.
Yeah.
Kicked off our shoes and danced. And I didn't know Drew from, he and I didn't know each other, but I reached out to him a few days later and just said, hey, just want you to know. Because I think we all need encouragement. We all need encouragement. We all need to have somebody reach out sometimes and say, hey, you know what? I appreciate what you're doing. It doesn't have to be what you're doing on the air. It just can be, man, I love your attitude when I come into the store. We all need that.
Yeah.
So I just reached out to him and said, look, you made a lot of music. I just want you to know the impact that your song Family had on ours and had on my son. And that starts a little dialogue, and then we had the whole family. Our whole family went up to the Ryman this year because my 9-year-old granddaughter loves Drew Holcomb, and it was like, let's go to the Ryman, all 12 of us, and watch this because we hadn't been to the theater, that auditorium, and it was awesome. And And those are the moments. And look, when we're in there, we're thinking about Michael too. We're just thinking, man, would he have loved this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's how you kind of how you navigate that. I mean, there's not a how-to on how to navigate the loss of a child, but it's man, I try to let the wonderful memories far outweigh the sadness.
Yeah.
That like John said, I watched a couple of those videos. One, the letter to yourself, I think you did for CBS Morning.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
right?
that was
Gosh,
great.
it's so beautiful. And just, it kind of felt like cheating though, because I was like, I actually know everything. I was like,
You do. That's me. I mean, there's
It's
not
so
much more
great.
else to say. Okay.
and then the videos just about it. The I don't know, a couple of the talks you gave about Michael. One, I think was before his death, and maybe 20 or 21. That's so beautiful. And then, hearing you talk about it after, I was just so I was just so moved by y'all's heart for the kids. The story. I mean, anybody listening to this, if you have 10 minutes, go watch. You'll Google it and you'll watch Ernie talk about it. But just the story of y'all. I mean, your wife calling you and you said, just bring him home. That whole, I mean, the whole thing is just so beautiful. And just knowing, I mean, I'm always amazed by parents who, especially adoptive parents who take on, kids that already have a disability. Like, when you're getting them, this is what the trajectory looks like. And it's just so beautiful. I just felt like I was reminded so much about God in those videos, just like this is how this space, works. And it's just gorgeous. It's beautiful. And it shows y'all's family's heart. And then the video of y'all dancing on the stage was just so sweet. It was just so beautiful. Hearing, of course, Drew and knowing that song, but seeing y'all do that, it's really, I think the thing that John and I talked about that I'm so moved by you, and this is a good place to probably end, is that I think it's always so refreshing and encouraging to see someone that's been able to do what they've done with their career like you have and had the success. But as John said so well, brings so much humanity to it. And as your dad charged you to be yourself, which you've done so well. And I think it's for those of us who are kind of in front of people and are, you kind of have these audiences like you do, and John and I and Drew and all of us, it's just such a good reminder, one, the humanity part of being honest, being human, let people see these parts of us that make us real and who we are, but also, like your dad said, to be yourself in those moments too, and the joy that comes from you and the guys and Kenny pushing Shaq into a tree, which I'll never get him. But the whole thing, I'm so thankful for the legacy you're leaving and how you're living your life and what you do, because I think it's such a beautiful. Again, I just feel like anybody, even my friends, like when your name comes up, they're just like, what a great guy. I'm like, doesn't he seem like someone you want to go get lunch with? So thank you for just being who you are. It's such a powerful, inspiring thing. So,
I mean, look, we're lucky, anytime you can do what you love.
Yeah.
And that's what, and I've talked about it before, it's a get-to job.
Yes, I love that.
Job. It's a get-to job.
Love that.
Do this, man. It's and never lose sight of that, and never take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
Laugh at yourself. Be the first one to laugh at yourself because it lightens up the world, and so we all have stuff. We're all gonna go through stuff. We're all gonna have experiences, and look, if I don't know how anybody gets through it without faith. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I know that I will see Michael again someday. I don't know when that's going to be, but it's like it's just my belief that this isn't the end, so that's what carries you through. Faith, family, friends. That's what carries you through times like this.
That's a great word.
Yeah.
And that's cool. What I see, I could ask you guys 2 hours of music questions. I really could. I could ask you guys, because I'm always, when I'm watching, I have no idea how you do what you do. I have no idea how things can sound the way they do on the stage. Like you probably know when you miss a beat, or if if a chord wasn't struck just perfectly. But for us, it's like,
Ernie, I've got videos I can send you of some of my shows.
but it's awesome. And like when I'm watching a concert, I said, how come he's taking his earpiece out now?
Oh yeah,
Why,
yeah.
why isn't I thought, why is that?
Because he's hearing that gag yell 7, cut to 7, and he's just
Yeah, exactly. No, it's like I've always wondered that. I've seen somebody up and they got the two earphones in and they're singing, and all of a sudden one comes out and it's like, why? Why did they take that out? What's going on?
Hey,
in there
one of these days, I would love to sit down and talk through all that inside baseball on music. It would be a blast.
Man, I would too. Because I have a million questions. You know who my first concert was, by the way? This will impress you.
Is that
The Beatles
no
way?
Where?
Really?
in Atlanta. Right after the Braves moved from Milwaukee to Atlanta. So it's 65 or 66. I'm 8 or 9 years old. I have two older sisters. So they were at Atlanta Stadium on that big tour when they were all across the country.
Oh my gosh!
So the first concert I ever went to was the Beatles.
Do you remember much of it?
A little, not that much. And I remember them running out, and I remember it was really loud. I remember everybody was screaming. I remember my sisters were bonkers.
Yeah.
But it was, but yeah,
Gosh,
it was.
that's cool.
Yeah, it was.
My dad saw him on that tour in Memphis and didn't tell me that. I'm not kidding. He didn't tell me about that until like 10 years ago. And I mean, he said it so. Yes, I was like, what? Why would you? He's like, oh, well, I saw him when they came. I was like, hold on. You saw? He was like, yeah, in Memphis. I was like, Dad, this, like, when I'm cognizant at 3, that should have been about when you said, hey, son, just so you know, I've seen the Beatles live, and I'd been like, well, that's even at that age. Okay, so we have a quick speed round for you, Ernie. This is how we end these, and
I'm
buckle
horrible
up
at
because
these.
these are going
I
to
can't
be
wait. I'm
hard
horrible.
hitting, highly journalistic questions. So get ready. Favorite basketball player of all time?
Pete Maravich.
Oh, Pistol Pete.
See, you're good at this. That's the quickest answer we've ever had, actually. All right, who's the person you geeked out the most meeting?
Ooh, Denzel Washington.
Really?
Yeah, and what surprised me is that he knew who I was.
Well, I mean, of course he
cool.
knew.
Yeah, of course he knew.
But I'm at the Forum. We're covering a game, and I was like, I got to go say hey to Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I just want to say hey. I'm Ernie Johnson. Ernie, I watch you all the time. Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're like, what's your favorite things about me, though, now that we're talking about me?
Enough about you, Denzel.
Yeah. Let's talk more about me. Okay, when did the bow tie start becoming your look?
That was like in, I want to say 2011, 2012, somewhere around there.
It's not that long
recently.
ago.
Yeah, it was back then, and I had worn one to a Christmas party. My wife and I have a Christmas party every year, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do a bow tie this year. And I didn't know how to tie it, but I worked on it, and then I said, you know what, I bought 2 or 3 when I was at the store. I'm going to wear one on the air. And so I withstood the
I was going to say
all the rocks that people were throwing at me.
Yep.
Orville Redenbacher and blah blah blah, and now I don't have any regular ties. All I have are bow ties, and
I'm sure people send them to you by the droves, right?
Well, some people have sent some, but I'm also like I've got a couple of online companies that I always go to that have great ones, and so I probably missed an opportunity to have like somebody just provide me with them, but it's like no, it was just it just kind of
it just feels like one needs to be called the Ernie. I just feel like there's like a give me
we
Ernie,
need that.
and it's like
Ernie?
I'm just saying that's a little inspiration. Okay, 3 people, alive or dead, that you could eat dinner with.
That I could eat dinner with 3 people. See, John, you were impressed with the alacrity.
I didn't want to say it, but you're slowing down, Ernie.
This one's gonna take a while.
Alacrity. I've never heard that.
So let's see who I would. I think MLK would be one. I think the Apostle Paul would be one.
That would be a fascinating conversation.
I've got some
already.
questions for him.
And so we're having like this dinner for four right here, right?
Yeah.
And then let's have one more dinner with Dad. That'd be good.
Oh, come on. That's so sweet. Could you imagine the Apostle Paul and MLK? That'd be like, I'm not going to say a word.
No,
I don't even care what you're
I would
talking
just say,
about.
look, yeah, nobody cares what I got to say.
Good gracious.
I feel like I'm on our show
He's like,
again.
you spent some time in a prison? Yeah, I've been in a prison a while. Yeah, I know prison.
You might have read a letter from the Birmingham jail. Yeah, you might have read it.
I've got one called Romans. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
All right, we've got two more. Final two. Favorite broadcasting moment, which seems like a ridiculous question.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous question, but let's...
I won't narrow it down to a moment, but I'll say doing games with my dad for those parts of 3 or 4 years back in the 90s was no matter who else I ever worked with and no matter how much fun we have on the show, sitting shoulder to shoulder with my dad calling baseball, that was
Can't get better
that was
than that.
it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Do you feel like in that moment y'all both knew how special that was? Like, could you feel it being there together?
I could feel it. I could, what I didn't want was my dad to retire at that point, or just to drive him out of the booth.
Yeah.
I thought this was going to be a good idea, Ernst, but it's not working.
Not working.
No, I think, and you know what, and some of the best parts of that weren't actually just doing the games. There's like during spring training, we'd get up in West Palm Beach and get behind the wheel and drive to Kissimmee, Florida to do a game and just hanging out, drinking coffee and laughing. Those were the moments. Yeah. And I've always found that to be the case in all the sports I do, that I don't always remember who wins and loses. But man, the people you meet and the moments you experience and just the things that happen away from where the game might be played, those are the things you remember.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say. And that was probably too long an answer to
No. You're still in. You're not
moments,
disqualified. You're crushing it. Okay, last question.
Yeah.
If you wrote a book about fatherhood, what would it be called?
Unscripted. I already did that.
You did this. See, that's a cheat code.
Yeah,
we should have
true.
known. I mean, guys,
but that is. I mean, the book is a lot about that, and I chose that for the title because it kind of defined the way our show is, unscripted, unrehearsed.
Yeah.
But it's the same way with the stuff that happens as your husband, and your dad. This wasn't the script I wrote, but it's the script that that it's playing out. So
yeah,
that would be it. And that's a layup. Thanks for that.
I love that we
another
end
quick
with a
one.
sports analogy too. Ernie, you are a legend. I
Thank
can't
you
tell you
so
how much
much.
it means you giving us this time and hanging with us. And
It's been
just
an
such
honor.
a joy to be with you.
Guys, I couldn't wait to do this. It was so cool. I got that text from Drew, and I was like, hey, he said, I can send you some stuff. And I said, look, if you're vouching for these dudes, I'm in. And so, and it was great because I was looking at a bunch of videos over the last couple of days of your guys' music and bios and stuff. And it took me back, Dave, because Bebo Norman. I didn't know you worked with Bebo a little bit.
Look at you.
Bebo.
And I was like, he used to be, back in the day, I go through these phases of like I was immersed in Christian contemporary music for a while. And that's like when I met Stephen and that, and it was like, I got a chance. I was speaking at an event outside Atlanta, and Bebo was playing at it. And then we kind of stayed in touch a little bit. But I remember my wife and I called him one day because we had decided to adopt again, and we said, this is just like that song of yours called Here Goes.
Yeah.
And we were playing that, and I said, we need to call him. We did. Cheryl and I called him and just said, hey, thanks for that, man. That was encouraging.
Bebo.
That was inspiring.
He was such a huge reason I started my career. I mean, his music was
Yeah.
Such a big part of my beginnings. That's so funny, Bevo. Gosh. Well, thank you, brother. It means the world.
I could do this forever. And I'm not. These are so much more fun than. Hey, what do you think Orlando did in free agency? Hey, can you do this?
Well, our speed round is also.
No, some of those, the sports centric kind of stuff is like, oh my goodness. But I just love talking about stuff, guys, and this is the real stuff.
Yeah.
And, And so, thank you for having me on. This is awesome for me. I appreciate it.